clarity and discipline are the forces that turn ordinary days into something extraordinary. It's not about being strong all the time. It's about knowing what truly matters and focusing on it. Waking up every day with a clear sense of purpose, not shaken by setbacks, not pulled by the chaos around you, and fully focused on what actually matters. It almost sounds unrealistic, like it belongs to a different kind of person, but it doesn't. That level of control isn't about being extraordinary. It comes down to seeing something most people miss, because the real struggle isn't a lack of discipline. It's a lack of direction beneath it. There's a reason the ideas of Marcus Aurelius still hold weight centuries later. Stoicism was never about escaping life or suppressing emotion. It was about clarity, seeing what deserves your energy and what doesn't. And when that becomes clear, discipline changes. It stops feeling forced. It becomes alignment, a quiet, steady way of moving through life without constantly working against yourself. And once that shift begins, the noise starts to lose its grip. Decisions become simpler, not easier, but clearer. You stop chasing everything at once and start moving with intention. And in that space, something stronger begins to take shape. Not motivation, not intensity, but a form of discipline that actually holds. Everything begins with a simple but uncomfortable realization. Not everything deserves your effort. It sounds obvious, but look closely at how most days unfold. Small distractions feel urgent. Notifications feel important. Other people's expectations quietly become priorities. And before you notice it, but nothing meaningful has moved forward. That's a different kind of exhaustion. Not from doing too much, but from doing too much of what doesn't matter. When clarity is missing, everything feels important. That's the trap. You respond to whatever is loudest, whatever shows up first. It feels productive, but it isn't direction. It's reaction. And over time, that becomes costly. You move more, but you don't move forward. Effort increases, but results don't. And the frustration builds not because you're lazy, but because something deeper isn't aligned. So the real starting point isn't action, it's clarity. It's stepping back even briefly and asking what actually deserves your time and energy, not based on pressure or comparison, but on what genuinely matters when everything else is stripped away. That question isn't comfortable because it forces you to see how much of your life might be running on autopilot. But it's necessary because without that honesty, discipline becomes reactive instead of intentional. You don't choose your actions, they choose you. And once you see that clearly, something begins to shift. You stop trying to do everything. You start focusing on what matters. Discipline isn't about restriction, it's about alignment. When your actions reflect what you truly value, discipline stops feeling forced. You don't rely on motivation anymore because you've built something deeper. Because for the first time, you're not reacting to life, you're directing it. Not just to listen, but to commit. Subscribing here is about choosing to return to this mindset again and again, a reminder to stay clear, to stay intentional, and to keep building. Hesitation, the internal dialogue that tries to convince you to delay. But readiness rarely arrives on its own. It follows action, not the other way around. You observe more. And in that observation, you gain a level of control that wasn't there before. Without it, behavior remains unconscious. With it, even deeply ingrained habits can begin to shift. Epictetus captured this idea simply when he said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." That mastery doesn't come from suppressing impulses. It comes from understanding them, seeing them clearly, and choosing not to be ruled by them. As this awareness deepens, something else begins to change. The intensity of the impulses starts to weaken, not because they disappear, but because they lose their authority. They no longer feel like commands, they feel like options. And when something becomes an option instead of a command, you regain the ability to choose based on what actually matters, not just what feels easiest in the moment. That shift is subtle, but it's significant. It marks the point where discipline starts to move from effort to understanding. You're working with a clearer view of how your mind operates, and that clarity makes consistency more achievable. Not because things get easier. You didn't consciously choose. It also brings a certain calm, a sense that you're not at the mercy of every passing thought or feeling. You can sit with discomfort without immediately trying to escape it. You can stay with a task even when your mind suggests something else. And in those moments, you begin to experience a different kind of strength. Not loud or visible, but steady, reliable. And as that steadiness grows, it reinforces everything that comes after. Because discipline at its core isn't about forcing action. It's about creating enough space between impulse and response that your actions become intentional. That space is where control lives. And once you learn to access it, even briefly, you start to realize how much of your behavior was never truly yours to begin with. That pause, small as it seems, is where everything begins to change. Not in some dramatic, life-altering moment, but in something far quieter, a hesitation, a brief space between what you feel and what you do. Most people overlook it because it doesn't feel significant. It doesn't look like progress. But that space is where discipline starts to take shape, not as force, not as resistance, but as awareness. The ability to see what's happening inside you before you immediately react to it. The mind doesn't make this process easy either. It's persuasive. It can justify almost anything if given enough space. It tells you that this one time doesn't matter, that you'll start later, that you deserve a break. And in the moment, that's what makes them effective. They don't appear as obstacles. They appear as solutions. And if you're not paying attention, you follow them without question. This is where trust becomes important. Not trust in how you feel, because feelings shift constantly. Not trust in motivation, because motivation fades, but trust in something deeper. Your judgment, your ability to recognize what actually matters and act accordingly, even when it's not convenient. That kind of trust doesn't appear overnight. It's built slowly through repeated moments where you choose alignment over ease. But what you're doing in these moments of pause is exactly that. Bringing awareness to what was previously automatic. You're seeing the patterns, the impulses, the justifications. And once they're visible, they lose some of their control. Over time, this awareness becomes more consistent. You don't need to force the pause as much. It begins to happen naturally. You notice the impulse as it appears. You recognize the familiar patterns, and instead of being pulled by them, you observe them. That observation creates space, and in that space, better decisions become possible. This doesn't mean the impulses disappear. They don't. The mind continues to suggest easier paths, quicker rewards, immediate comfort. But the difference is, you're no longer automatically following those suggestions. You're choosing. And that choice, repeated over time, becomes the foundation of discipline. It also changes how you experience yourself. You begin to see that you're not defined by every thought or feeling that arises. You don't have to act on everything you experience. There's a separation, a sense that you can observe without immediately reacting. And that separation creates stability because you're no longer being pushed in every direction by whatever shows up internally. And as that stability grows, so does confidence. Not the kind that relies on external validation, but a quieter form. The kind that comes from knowing you can rely on yourself. That when you decide something matters, you'll follow through. Not perfectly, but consistently enough to trust the direction you're moving in. That's where discipline starts to feel different. Less like something you're forcing, more like something you're becoming. It's no longer about controlling every action. It's about understanding the process behind those actions. And once you understand that process, you stop fighting yourself as much. You start working with that awareness instead, and it all comes back to that pause. That small moment that most people ignore. The space where awareness enters, where choice becomes possible, where discipline quietly begins to take form. not as something imposed from the outside, but as something built from within. It doesn't arrive all at once. There's no moment where everything suddenly clicks and discipline becomes effortless. It builds slowly, almost quietly, through repetition, through showing up in ways that feel small, sometimes even meaningless in the moment, doing what you said you would do, even when the result isn't immediate, even when no one notices. Especially then, because those are the moments that shape something deeper than outcomes. They shape how you see yourself. At first, it doesn't feel like much is happening. You follow through on belief, often without conscious effort. This is why small actions matter so much. Not because of what they produce immediately, but because of what they reinforce. Each time you show up, you're sending a message to yourself about who you are, about what you value, about what you're capable of maintaining over time. And those messages accumulate. They form a pattern, and that pattern becomes your baseline. There's no need for dramatic change. When this process is in place, you don't need to constantly push yourself harder or aim for more intensity, because consistency compounds. What feels small today doesn't stay small. It builds quietly, gradually, and before you notice it, something that once required effort starts to feel natural. Seneca expressed this idea simply when he said, "Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity." Preparation in this sense isn't about waiting for something big. It's about consistently doing what matters regardless of whether an opportunity is visible yet. Because when it does appear, you're ready. Not because you rush to prepare, but because you've been preparing all along. This also changes how you view progress. Instead of looking for immediate results, you start to pay attention to patterns, to whether you're showing up, whether you're following through, whether your actions are aligned with your intentions over time. And that perspective creates a different kind of satisfaction, one that isn't dependent on outcomes, but on consistency. There's a certain quiet confidence that comes from this, not loud, not visible, but steady. The kind that doesn't need validation because it's built on something real, on repeated action, on follow-through, on proof that you can rely on yourself even in small ways. And that confidence becomes a foundation, something you can build on. At the same time, this process requires patience because results don't always show up immediately. And when they don't, it's easy to question whether what you're doing is working. But that doubt is part of the process. It's what tests whether your actions are truly aligned with your values or just dependent on visible outcomes. Staying consistent through that uncertainty is what strengthens discipline. Not just doing the action, but continuing to do it without immediate reinforcement, because that's where most people stop. They need to see something happening. They need proof. And when it's not there, they lose momentum. But if you can continue anyway, something deeper starts to form. Effort begins to feel different, less forced, less dependent on external factors, more internal, more stable. You're no longer reacting to what's happening around you. You're acting based on what you've already decided, of strengthening your response. You weaken it by dividing it across things that don't move. Letting go of what you can't control isn't easy. It goes against instinct. The mind wants to fix, to adjust, to make things align with its expectations. But over time, that effort creates tension, a constant sense of resistance. And that resistance doesn't solve the problem. It amplifies it, because now you're dealing with both the situation and your reaction to it. When you begin to release that need for control over external things, something shifts internally. There's less friction, less wasted energy. You're no longer trying to manage everything at once. Instead, your focus narrows. It becomes directed toward what you can actually influence: your thoughts, your actions, your decisions. And that focus creates clarity. That clarity allows you to respond more effectively, not because the situation changes, but because your relationship to it does. You're not reacting from frustration or urgency. You're acting from a place of awareness. You see what's happening and you choose how to engage with it. That choice, even if small, creates stability. Epictetus captured this idea in a way that remains as relevant now as it was then. Make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens. There's a simplicity to that, but also a depth. It's not about ignoring reality. It's about engaging with it in a way that preserves your energy and directs it where it matters most. As this perspective becomes more consistent, challenges begin to feel different, less overwhelming, more structured. You still experience difficulty, but it doesn't pull you in as many directions. You don't get caught in every reaction. You observe more. You respond with intention, and that changes the outcome. Not always externally, but internally. This internal shift is what strengthens discipline over time, not the absence of difficulty, but the ability to navigate it without losing alignment. To stay grounded in your actions even when circumstances are unstable. And that kind of stability isn't built through avoidance. It's built through repeated exposure paired with awareness. At the same time, this approach reduces unnecessary stress because you're no longer carrying the weight of things you can't change. You're not replaying situations, endlessly trying to find a different version of events. You accept what is and direct your energy toward what can be done now. That acceptance isn't passive, it's efficient. Over time, this becomes a habit. You start to naturally filter situations through this lens. What is within my control? What isn't? And once that distinction is clear, your response follows more. This creates a sense of reliability. You begin to trust your own process, not because it guarantees a specific result, but because it's consistent. You show up, you follow through, you stay aligned. And that consistency builds something deeper than success. It builds confidence. This confidence isn't loud. It doesn't depend on external validation. It's quieter than that, more stable. It comes from knowing that regardless of what happens, you'll continue to act in a way that reflects what matters to you. And that kind of certainty removes a lot of internal conflict. You no longer need constant reassurance. You don't need to check whether you're on the right path every few moments because your actions already reflect your direction. You're not waiting for confirmation. You're creating it through what you do. Marcus Aurelius expressed this idea clearly when he wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." That strength doesn't come from controlling outcomes. It comes from controlling your response to them, from maintaining your focus regardless of what's happening externally. As this mindset becomes more consistent, something else begins to shift. The influence of external opinions starts to fade, not because they disappear, but because they no longer carry the same weight. You're not basing your actions on approval or criticism. You're basing them on alignment, and that makes your decisions more stable. This stability allows you to move forward without constant hesitation. You're not second-guessing every step. You're not adjusting your direction based on every piece of feedback. You listen, you observe, but you don't lose your center. And that's what keeps your progress steady. At the same time, this approach reduces emotional volatility. Because you're not tying your effort to specific outcomes, you're less affected when things don't go as planned. You adjust, you continue, but you don't collapse. Your sense of direction remains intact. That resilience is what makes this kind of discipline sustainable. It doesn't rely on perfect conditions. It doesn't depend on everything going right. It holds even when things are uncertain. And that consistency over time creates momentum. You start to notice that progress feels different, less dramatic, but more reliable. You're not relying on bursts of motivation or moments of intensity. You're building something steady, something that continues regardless of how you feel on any given day. And that steadiness changes how you experience effort. It stops feeling like something you have to force. It becomes something you return to, a process you trust, a rhythm you maintain. And in that rhythm, discipline becomes less about control and more about alignment. There's also a sense of freedom in this, because when you know longer attached to every outcome. You're less restricted by fear of failure or need for success. You can act more openly, more honestly. You're not holding back because of what might happen. You're moving forward because of what you've chosen to do. This doesn't remove uncertainty. It changes your relationship to it. You accept that outcomes will vary, that things won't always go as expected. But that acceptance doesn't weaken your effort. It strengthens it, because your focus remains where it has impact. Even with that growing clarity, the noise doesn't disappear. It never really does. It just changes form. Sometimes it comes from other people, opinions, expectations, judgments that arrive uninvited and linger longer than they should. Other times it comes from within. Doubt that sounds convincing, thoughts that question your direction, subtle suggestions that maybe you should adjust, slow down, or rethink everything you've already committed to. And because this noise doesn't always feel external, it becomes harder to separate from your own voice. That if something appears in your mind, it must have value. But that assumption is what gives noise its power. And over time, if you don't question that distinction, you start to treat every voice as equally important. Not because you've lost your ability to act. You adjust your path based on temporary, reflect your values. And in doing so, you slowly move away from the very clarity you worked to build. They don't come from a place of understanding. They come from a desire to avoid. Not all criticism is useful. Some of it is based on perspectives that don't align with your direction. Some of it is shaped by experiences that aren't yours, and some of it is simply noise, unfiltered, unexamined, and not worth carrying. It means becoming selective. Noise starts to lose its intensity. Not every opinion reflects value. This doesn't make the process easy. You're no longer assuming that everything you hear deserves action. You're evaluating it, filtering it, deciding whether it aligns with your direction or not. And that decision-making process becomes faster over time. You don't need to analyze every thought in detail. You develop a sense of what fits and what doesn't, what supports your path and what pulls you away from it. And that sense creates stability. At the same time, this approach protects your focus. Because once you stop giving attention to everything, your energy becomes more concentrated. You're not constantly shifting directions. You're not adjusting based on every new input. You're moving forward with intention, guided by something deeper than temporary noise. There's also a sense of freedom in this, because when external opinions lose their authority, you're less dependent on validation. You're not looking for constant approval. You're not measuring your actions against what others think you should be doing. You're acting based on what you've already determined matters. This doesn't isolate you, it grounds you. It allows you to engage with others without losing your center, to listen without being swayed unnecessarily, to consider feedback without abandoning your direction. And that balance is what keeps your discipline intact over time. This becomes part of how you operate. You don't react to every thought. You don't follow every opinion. You observe, you filter, and you choose. And that process reinforces your clarity. It strengthens your alignment. It keeps your actions consistent with what you've already decided matters. And in that consistency, the noise becomes less disruptive. It's still there, but it no longer defines your movement. It becomes background instead of direction, something you're aware of, but not controlled by. Because in the end, discipline isn't just about what you do. It's also about what you ignore, what you choose not to follow, what you allow to pass without influence. And once you develop that ability, your focus becomes stronger, your actions more intentional, and your direction far more stable. That's where reflection begins to take on a different kind of importance, not as something you do occasionally when things go wrong, but as a steady practice that keeps you aligned over time. It doesn't need to be complicated or time-consuming. It's simply a moment where you step back and look at how your day actually unfolded. Not the version you intended, not the version you hoped for, but what truly happened, the decisions you made, the moments you followed through, and the ones where you didn't. At first, This kind of reflection can feel uncomfortable because it removes the distance between your intentions and your actions. It shows you clearly where they match and where they don't, and that clarity can be difficult to face. It's easier to stay in motion, to keep moving forward without looking back. But without that pause, patterns remain hidden, and what remains hidden continues to repeat. The purpose of reflection isn't to criticize yourself. It's not about pointing out every mistake or holding yourself to impossible standards. It's about understanding, seeing your behavior without distortion, recognizing where you acted with intention and where you drifted into automatic responses. Because once you see those patterns, you have something to work with, something you can adjust. There's a difference between judging yourself and observing yourself. Judgment creates pressure. It leads to frustration, to discouragement, to the feeling that you're falling short. Observation, on the other hand, creates awareness. It allows you to notice what's happening without immediately attaching a negative meaning to it. And that distinction is what makes reflection useful instead of overwhelming. As this practice becomes more consistent, you begin to notice certain themes, moments where your focus weakens, situations that trigger hesitation or distraction, patterns that repeat across different days. These aren't random. They're signals, indicators of where your discipline holds and where it starts to break. And once you recognize them, you can begin to respond differently. This is where small adjustments come in. Not drastic changes, not complete overhauls, but subtle shifts. Choosing to handle a familiar situation slightly differently, staying present a little longer, following through when you might have drifted before. These changes don't feel significant in isolation, but over time they reshape your behavior. Carl Jung captured this process clearly when he said, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." That awakening isn't dramatic, it's gradual. It happens through repeated moments of awareness, through consistently turning your attention inward, not to overanalyze. And in that understanding, you begin to see how your actions are shaped. This awareness also creates a sense of continuity. Instead of each day feeling separate, disconnected from the last, they begin to link together. What you notice today informs how you act tomorrow. What you adjust tomorrow influences what happens next. And that continuity strengthens your discipline because you're no longer starting from zero each day. You're building on what you've already observed. At the same time, this process requires honesty, not harshness, but clarity. The ability to see things as they are without minimizing or exaggerating. To acknowledge where you followed through and where you didn't without turning it into a story about your worth. Because reflection isn't about who you are, it's about what you do. And what you do can always be adjusted. Over time, this practice becomes less about reviewing your entire day and more about staying aware throughout it. The reflection doesn't just happen at the end. It begins to happen in real time. You notice when you're drifting. You recognize when you're about to act out of habit instead of intention. And that awareness allows you to adjust immediately rather than waiting until later. This shift makes discipline more fluid, less reactive. You're not constantly correcting yourself after the fact. You're guiding your actions as they happen, and that reduces the gap between intention and behavior. It keeps you aligned more consistently. This doesn't mean every day becomes perfect. It doesn't. There will still be moments where you drift, where you react, where you don't follow through as you intended. But those moments don't define the entire day anymore. They become part of a process, something you notice, understand, and adjust from. That perspective reduces pressure because you're no longer expecting perfection. You're focusing on progress, on awareness, on gradual improvement. And that focus makes discipline more sustainable. It removes the need for constant intensity and replaces it with consistency. As this practice continues, you begin to see yourself more clearly. Not just your actions, the tendencies that shape your decisions, the triggers that influence your behavior. And with that clarity, your ability to respond improves. You're no longer guessing why something happened. you understand it. And that understanding allows you to act with more intention, to make choices that align more closely with what you've already recognized as important. This also strengthens your sense of control, not over external events, but over your internal responses. Because the more you understand your patterns, the less they control you. You're not acting unconsciously, you're choosing. And that choice, repeated over time, becomes the foundation of discipline, not something forced, but something developed, built through awareness and maintained through consistency. In the end, reflection isn't about looking back for the sake of it. It's about using what you see to move forward more clearly, to refine your actions, to strengthen your alignment, and to ensure that each day contributes, even in small ways, to the direction you've chosen. Over time, something begins to settle into place, and it's not what most people expect. Discipline stops feeling like something you have to fight for. It stops feeling like constant resistance, like you're always pushing against yourself just to stay on track. Instead, it starts to feel quieter, more stable, less like effort, and more like alignment. Not because things suddenly become easy, but because your actions and your values are no longer pulling in opposite directions. That difference changes everything. When there's misalignment, every action feels heavier than it should. You hesitate more. You negotiate with yourself more. You've already decided what matters, and that decision carries more weight than any temporary feeling. This doesn't mean you never experience resistance. You do. There are still moments where things feel difficult, where the easier option is appealing, but those moments don't derail you in the same way. They don't create the same level of internal conflict because your direction is clear. And when direction is clear, decisions become simpler. There's a kind of confidence that develops here, not the kind that seeks attention, but something quieter, more grounded. You trust your ability to continue even when things aren't ideal. You trust the process you've built because you've seen it hold over time. And that trust removes a lot of the uncertainty that usually interrupts progress. You're no longer starting from zero each day. You're building on something consistent, something that doesn't depend on how you feel when you wake up. And that continuity creates momentum. Not fast, not dramatic, but steady. The kind that doesn't collapse when things get difficult. Marcus Aurelius captured this idea in a way that still resonates. Waste no more time arguing about what an unpredictable. This doesn't remove challenges. It changes how you engage with them. You're not thrown off course as easily. You adjust, you continue, but your foundation remains intact, and that stability is what allows you to keep moving forward without constantly resetting. At the same time, this way of operating creates a kind of freedom, not from responsibility, but from unnecessary struggle. You're no longer caught in cycles of starting and stopping, of building momentum only to lose it again. You've created something that sustains itself through consistency and alignment. And once you experience that, not because you can't, but because you see the difference clearly, you recognize what it feels like to act with intention instead of reaction, to move forward without constant resistance, to maintain direction even when things aren't ideal. That awareness changes your standards. You no longer settle for temporary bursts of discipline followed by long periods of inconsistency. You aim for something steadier, something more reliable, and that shift in expectation reinforces the structure you've built. Over time, this becomes your default, not something you switch on and off, but something that remains in place. You don't need to constantly remind yourself what to do. You've already internalized it, and that internalization is what makes discipline sustainable. There's also a deeper sense of meaning that comes with this because your actions are no longer random or reactive. They're connected, aligned with what you value, and that alignment creates a sense of purpose. That doesn't depend on external outcomes. You begin to feel that your days are building towards something, not in a dramatic way, but in a consistent one. Each action contributes. Each decision reinforces your direction, and that accumulation creates progress that feels real. In the end, Discipline stops being something you chase. It becomes something you embody, not perfectly, not without effort, but consistently enough that it shapes how you move through life. And in that consistency, you find something most people are still searching for. Not control over everything, but control over yourself. At the end of it all, what you're really building isn't just discipline. It's a way of standing steady in a world that constantly tries to pull you in every direction. A way of thinking clearly when things get loud, acting with intention when it would be easier not to, and staying aligned with who you're becoming, even when no one else sees it. If this resonated with you, there's another video on your screen right now that goes even deeper into this path. Take a step further into it, and truly, thank you for being part of Stoic Journal.